Today I want to talk to you about an idea that not a lot of worship leaders really consider, and it's the idea of training other people to lead worship. And I'm not talking about what I'm doing here on my worship leading coach. I'm talking about you in your church mentoring others to be able to lead worship. See, Ephesians chapter 4 tells us that leadership was put in position in the church to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. So over the years, I have trained, mentored, discipled, whatever word you want to use there, lots of different people in leading worship. And because the reason that I would do that is because I was convinced from that Ephesians 4 passage is that if I did it all myself, then I blew it. And so my goal was to train others into that position. I always said that if I worked myself out of a job, that God had something else for me anyway. If I'm really doing what His Word says to equip the saints for the work of the ministry, then I'm not concerned about the future. I'm simply doing what God's Word says I should be doing. And so part of that for me as a worship leader, it's not just going in and leading worship on Sunday morning, it's training other people to lead worship. And so over the years, I've had the opportunity to mentor lots of different people. Now, once you understand that concept, once you begin to recognize, yes, this is part of my job, part of what I should be doing, I think a big part, but at least to be able to acknowledge this is part of what I need to be doing as a worship leader, then there are some other aspects, some other things to consider in the midst of that. Things like how and who, those are big deals. So let's talk about those ideas. How are you going to train somebody else? How are you going to mentor somebody else in leading worship? What kind of things do you want to put into them? What do you think is important for them to know? If you were trained, if you had some kind of training as a worship leader, a lot of worship leaders didn't, and I get that, all right? But if you did, then you at least have some basis to start from. And you can utilize some of those, but you have to understand everybody is different. And so there may be some things that are peculiar to you that you think are really important that maybe somebody never taught you that you need to consider. So I would start with the whole idea of really thinking through, if I'm going to train somebody, what's important for me to have them learn, to try to instill into them. Those are questions that only you can answer in your position, but they're questions that need to be answered. You might want to consider my book, Mentoring Worship Leaders, Training the Next Generation. It's just a practical guide, 10 different worship leaders from around the country, just sharing stories of how they trained other people to lead worship. And that's the great thing about the book is that because it's lots of different people, it's not just one perspective. So you might look at it and say, well, this one here I really can't relate to, but these three over here make a lot of sense to me. You'll learn some practical stuff. So I'm not trying to sell you the book, but I am trying to get you some practical help that's going to make a difference for you in being able to train others in leading worship. So the whole how, really thinking through that, what am I going to do? How am I going to instill the information? What information do I want to put into them? And then how am I going to do that? I think are really big issues that need to be considered. The other thing that I mentioned earlier is the who. Who are you going to train? Maybe there's somebody there already that you recognize has some potential as a worship leader, and you need to begin to pour into them. That's great. That's a great beginning point. But I would encourage you to, even if you've got someplace to start, maybe that's not the only person. Again, I got to train, mentor lots of different people over the years as the main worship leader at our church. I was in that position for 14 years. And so I got to do that with a number of different people, to walk through that process. And I think that's a big issue of how you choose who it is that you're going to mentor. So prayerfully consider, God, what do you want me to do in this? Clearly from your word, Lord, you're saying that I need to do this. I need to be equipping the saints for the work of the ministry. So you need to show me who is to be involved. And again, maybe there's somebody there already, clearly, obviously you're going after that person. Maybe you end up with somebody that seems like they might be a good fit, but you're not sure. prayerfully consider. If you feel like you're not getting any stop signs there, talk to the person and say, look, here's what I'm thinking about. Are you interested in this possibility? Those kind of things to kind of feel out where they're at. There might be somebody who is can I say, reluctant in the whole thing. I remember a young lady that I really felt very strongly about mentoring. I had worked through this process with a number of others who either they approached me and said, hey, I'd like you to train me in leading worship, or I approached them and they were like, yeah, I'd really like to do this. But this young lady was pretty reluctant. She wasn't sure. She was an older teen at the time. And so I talked with her, I talked with her parents together, and finally we decided, all right, let's go ahead and give this a shot. Well, long story short, she, of all of the people that I mentored, I think was my greatest success story. She went on to actually lead worship full time at a church that's probably 10 times the size of the church that she grew up in. But it was because I pushed her, and she'll say the same thing. She'll tell you that it was because I pushed her toward doing that. And I wasn't being mean or coercive, but I did feel really strongly that this is something that God is saying, and I needed to help her into to shape her, mold her into that role, so that she could then lead worship in the future. And so those are just some practical things. Again, I want you to think about that whole Ephesians 4 thing, that we're to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. If that's really our job as leadership in the church, then how do we do that with people, and who do we pick to do it? Those are important questions that you need to consider.
Brought to you by myworshipleadingcoach.com.
Helping you to be more fully equipped as a worship leader.